Welcome to the City Club of Eugene, October 4th, 2019 program, Downtown Achievements. This is the fifth program of our 2019-2020 programming year. My name is Eric Richardson, and I serve as the president of the City Club of Eugene. Mary Lighton, who will introduce today's guest. Mary?
Less than 10 years ago, a giant hole occupied the block across 10th Street from the Eugene Public Library. It was one of two empty pits in the heart of the business district. Less than 10 years ago, the view from the second floor of 45 West Broadway, where I had an office in a small charter school, was across Broadway at the boarded-up windows of a building we then called the Center Court Building, a former home of J.C. Penney. Behind the windows was a sodden mess. The inside of 45 West Broadway was not that much better, but it was, it had a roof. Since then, downtown has undergone a renaissance. Now the library's neighbor to the north is a thriving satellite campus of Lane Community College with classrooms and residences clustered around a central patio. The beautifully renovated Center Court, now called the Broadway Commerce Center, is home to growing businesses. 45 West Broadway is full of apartments, restaurants, and movie theaters. How did that happen, and why? This program comes from my interest in stopping occasionally to celebrate the things we've got done. The news can be kind of grim lately, but it's important to stop and look over what did we decide to do these many years ago and accomplish. So I'm very happy to present Denny Braud, who will tell the story. He has worked in Eugene's Planning and Development Department for 30 years and now serves as its executive director. He will explain why it's important to the whole community that we invest in downtown and why we should care what happens there. He will describe the goals of the 2004 downtown plan and list what we have accomplished so far. He started his career in the city's business assistance team, supporting small business development. He's worked in and managed the Business Development Small Fund program, well, a whole bunch of programs, most of which we won't recognize, but he helped hundreds of small businesses figure out how to make a living downtown and to persist in making a living downtown and to work through the issues that inevitably materialized. He's assumed the position of City of Eugene Planning and Development Director in 2016. He oversees city services, including planning, building, and permit services, economic prosperity, affordable housing, downtown, urban renewal, parking, and solid waste and recycling. He's really cut his teeth and learned his trade building us a beautiful downtown, and I am happy to introduce Denny. His first question will be from his boss, John Reese.
All right, I have a podium phobia, so I'm going to sit out here in front of you guys. Thank you, Mary, so much. I'm just going to say that when Mary approached me with the idea of celebrating downtown and everything we've accomplished downtown, I was super excited to do this because we have a really good story. As you've heard, Mary told you a little bit about my background, but I have been doing this for a long time. And so I've been able to kind of see how downtown has evolved and not only what we've done, but how we're doing it and why we're doing it. So I'm hoping that I add an interesting perspective today. And I'm going to try to tell a little bit of a story. I don't have a sales pitch. I don't have a debate. I don't have anything but ability to tell you a story about downtown. So that's really what I'm hoping to do today. And I'm hoping that we walk out of here and really recognize and be proud of what we've done as a community. A little disclaimer, I'm going to use the term we a lot, what we've done, and it's not what I've done or the city done, it's what we all have done downtown. So I think that's a really important acknowledgement as we tell this story. All right, so I always like to tell this story in the context of something that I call Back to the Future. And this is interesting, I know, but if you know the Back to the Future story, really the character goes back in time and really looks at things that happened in his life, in his family's life. Some of them worked well, some of them did not work so well. And he took what he learned from that to really kind of create a brighter future for himself and his family and so forth. So in a sense, that's what we've been doing downtown for the last 15 to 20 to 30 years, is looking at what we've done in the past, continuing to do what we do well, and also looking at some things that maybe we didn't do so well that we're now kind of repairing over time. So I think it's a really good analogy for the work we've done downtown. So I want to start with our history. In order to go back to the future, you kind of got to go back in history. And unfortunately, I'm going to go back about 100 years. And I know we really want to focus on the last 15 years, but I think it's really important to go back 100 years and recognize where Eugene and downtown Eugene was back then. And I would argue that our founding fathers, so to speak, were on the right track. We were building a downtown that had great streets and great architecture. I love the streetcar image that you see on Willamette Street. If you think about how advanced of a concept that was back in the early 1900s for a city like Eugene. And the important consideration there was a recognition that it was really important to get people into the downtown, not out of the downtown. So their goal was to make downtown in their city center a place to shop, to do commerce, to access services, for education, for entertainment. And downtown was really that hub of activity. So that was the 1920s. If you fast forward to sometime after the World War II, I believe, things changed a lot. Cities started to kind of grow outward with VA loans. Houses started to get built on the edge of town. We got fascinated by the automobile and transportation. And somehow we kind of evolved into getting people out of the downtown. So a lot of the way cities built out were getting people through the center of their towns and their downtowns, and getting them out to the edges of towns to experience their life out on the edge of town. I think we know kind of the outcome here is this is an expensive way to build a city. The infrastructure cost, the fact that downtowns kind of started to deteriorate as people in malls and all those kinds of things moved out of the downtown. I think the reason that's very important is we have our own story in Eugene that really replicates that a lot. And I'll give a couple of examples. On the corner of Broadway and Willamette in 1926, we built a beautiful building. It was called the McMorran Washburn Department Store. It was where Eugene came to shop. It was an awesome building designed by a world-renowned, or at least nationally known architect from Oregon. I think we could argue that in these kinds of instances, we were doing the right thing. This is great, building great buildings for our downtown and our community. What happened after World War II, I believe, is JCPenney purchased this building, and over time, they basically covered up that beautiful old building in our downtown in the spirit of modernism and those types of things. I think we know the end of this story. Eventually JCPenney left downtown and went out to the Valley River Mall. We tried to save that old building, and it became an office building for a while. But again, I think if you remember the story, this building became vacant on probably the most important corner of our downtown, Broadway and Willamette. I'm going to come back to that part of the story in just a second. There's a couple of other examples. There was a time in our history where Willamette Street was, I think you could argue, a great street. We had anchor retail stores there. We had local stores there. It's where the community came to experience downtown. I think, again, we know a lot of those anchor stores started to move to the edges of town or to the mall. And we tried to compete with that, and so we created the Downtown Pedestrian Mall at that time. It was an experiment. It was, again, an experiment in new modernism, or whatever you want to term that. And I think we know the end of that story as well. Like many pedestrian malls across the country, over time it failed. We had high vacancy rates downtown, and downtown was really struggling. So I think the back to the future moment for downtown, in my experience, was about in year 2000. So we started to reopen the streets downtown. We reopened Broadway and Willamette and Olive Street, and we started to bring back that, if you think about that 100 years ago, that fabric of downtown that really worked and really made sense. And so Broadway, in this case, was a beautiful street, and we start to see housing pop up along Broadway, and our city kind of starts to come back to life. So we were starting to see some potential kind of around the year 2000. We also made a really important decision to put our library downtown and to keep it downtown. It was difficult, as some of you may remember. We went several iterations of where do we build a library and how do we build a library. The good news is we recognized the importance of keeping it downtown, and we did that. But we also, as Mary mentioned, we had some pits downtown. The old Woolworth building, there was a pit there from the remnant of Woolworth moving out of our downtown. There was also this Sears pit that we were struggling with. So lots of momentum, but also lots of issues that that we were dealing with downtown. And so high vacancy rates, low property values, the rents were kind of depressed. We had pits downtown, but we also could kind of see the potential of a downtown that's kind of emerging and coming back to life. So what do we do from there? I'm going to start with, this is the 15 years ago and the 15-year story. We know we needed a plan. And so as the story goes, as I remember it, a bunch of city staff kind of gathered in a room and said, okay, we need a downtown plan. And the first ideas centered around, we need a lot of new rules and regulations and building heights and landscaping standards. And then there was kind of a rogue group of us that, and of course I was involved in that, that said, no, we need to give people some inspiration and some vision and some hope and some reason to invest in downtown, and some hope that maybe we could actually create that downtown that I think back 100 years ago we were in the process of building. So we talked a lot about great streets and civic center and culture and transportation and living downtown and reconnecting downtown to the river and all those really aspirational goals that we held as a community. From there, I think we really started doing some incredible things, and that's what I really want to celebrate here today. I'm coming back to the old Center Court building. Mary mentioned that building as well. I think it was vacant for 7 or 8 years. It even smelled bad when you walked by it. It had just been, and this was in the most important corner of our downtown again. And I remember sitting in Kesey Square with Hugh Pritchard, if you know Hugh Pritchard, and he pointed to this building and he said, "This is our log jam. If we can remove this log jam and make something happen with this building, things will start to happen." And he was right. We bought that building. We didn't really have an idea what we were going to do with it. And I think if I remember right, the city manager had just started. I think one of the first things he signed was the purchase of this building, and he trusted us that we were actually going to do something constructive with it. So thank you for putting trust in us, because we really didn't know how this was going to turn out. This is the Back to the Future moment for me. When you remove the layers of history from that building, you can kind of start to see that old building that was on the corner. And I know we didn't save the whole thing, but at least we kind of brought it back to life and really respected the work that the community did to build that initial building. I think we know the end of the story. It became the Broadway Commerce Center. I know it was right because people wanted to be in the building, and it filled up fast. We had architecture firms and creative types of companies and retail that wanted to be in this building. So off we went. Across the street, there was Mary's old home. She, I think, lived on the second floor up there somewhere. That building got redeveloped. We have retail and housing in that building. The Woolworth building filled one of the pits downtown. The Lane Community College downtown campus filled the other pit downtown. There's a similar story on the east side of downtown, and it really revolves around our industrial history along the river. It's a little different problem than we had downtown. If you think about the Pedestrian Mall, this was more about, historically, it was really important for industry to be on the river. But we didn't need the cannery on the river anymore necessarily, and we didn't necessarily need our public utility on the river anymore. And that was also always a major barrier to get to the river. You never really knew there was a river if you were downtown. You couldn't see it, you couldn't get to it, and we knew we had to solve that. So we kind of did the same thing. We bought it, and we demoed the old Agricat cannery. And I think some of you know what the conclusion. We started to make that process of returning our downtown to the river. So the first project was the federal courthouse. Next door, years later, the rest of the property was sold, and Northwest Community Credit Union put their headquarters there. I'll come back to that story here in a little minute because there's more to it. The other really important part of our downtown plan was the concept of living downtown. About the year 2000, we had started bringing some housing downtown, the High Street Terrace, Broadway Place apartments, the Aurora Affordable Housing Project, and we knew this was a really important element to get more people downtown, living downtown, being a part of downtown, making downtown their neighborhood. Other housing projects followed following the downtown plan. The Westtown on 8th Affordable Housing Project, the Tate Condominiums. Some buildings were starting to be kind of updated and uses changing. This is the old City Hall 2 building on Pearl Street that eventually got converted to housing. We also saw students housing downtown. I know student housing is sometimes debated in the community, but the reality is the first 15 or 20 years that I worked downtown, I never saw students downtown. And the university is like right there. So LCC brought student housing to downtown, which was awesome. 13th and Olive, the Hub. More recently, we've been working with Yopoa Terrace to renovate senior housing downtown. So, and I have some housing stats I'll show in a little bit. So it's been the whole element of bringing housing downtown has been pretty remarkable. We've also seen hotels downtown. I think the Inn at the Fifth was the first hotel that we brought downtown since the 1980s, I believe. A second hotel, the Home 2 Suites, came to our downtown. The Hilton recently was purchased and renovated, so there's been some hotel activity as well that I think has been really awesome. Retail. Obviously, people want retail downtown. If you think back to that 1950s image with downtown and Willamette Street, that is a really important element of downtown. If you think about 15 years ago, what was there 15 years ago, and what is here now, you'll see a lot of these retail images here that weren't here 15 years ago. And it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. Voodoo Donuts, Off the Waffle, the Davis, Mezzaluna, Perugino, the Barn Light, Sizzle Pie, Killer Burger, First National Tap House, Townsend's Tea, Whole Foods, Sam Bonds over by the river, Noisette, and yes, the governor does come down every morning and get her pastries at Noisette. Mosaic, Meraki and Claim 52, more recently. All of these are new and they weren't here 15 years ago. It's pretty remarkable. More recently, there's a new retailer on Willamette Street, Public Streetwear. We also have new theaters downtown, Oregon Temporary Theater, the Broadway Metro. If you haven't been to the expansion of the Broadway Metro, it's pretty awesome what they've added there, and I really encourage you to experience that. David Minor Theater. All of those things are new downtown, and it's definitely worth celebration. There's also this other thing that it's emerging downtown that I just want to touch on. Is the whole idea of innovation. Innovation, I won't get too much into innovation and innovation districts, but it's basically a process where people come together and they take advantage of opportunities and solve problems and all of those things. And downtown over the last 15 years is really emerging as a place for innovation. We call it an innovation district or an innovation network, but the idea is you have a bunch of people that are coming downtown to do a lot of really, really cool and positive things. I think the first innovative thing that we did downtown is MX. If you remember the slide with the streetcar and the whole idea of bringing people to downtown, That's really what MX started to do. Its goal was to have the hub of transportation, the downtown station, right in the middle of downtown, and the purpose is to bring more people downtown. I think that was a really innovative, and the way we did it, I think, which was a national model, was very innovative at the time. I think that was one of the big investments we made that started us on this course of innovation. The other is the Downtown Fiber Project, and if you're not familiar with this, we basically lit up downtown with world-class fiber, and we did it in a very innovative way, working with eWeb. We basically co-located fiber in the electrical conduit underneath the ground, made it a really cheap and cost-effective way to do it, therefore allowing people to access world-class internet at a really, really low cost. It really distinguishes us from almost any other city in the country because of the way we've done it. It's very innovative. What's happened is a whole lot of other things that kind of fall under that innovation umbrella have emerged. We now have the Regional Accelerator Innovation Network, known as RAIN, which is a U of O program or a partnership with the U of O downtown. The university has also located its new School of Art and Design downtown, and again, that's bringing more creative, innovative personalities to our downtown. The really cool thing about the whole idea of innovation and fiber is companies and creative people and young people and innovators, they all want to be part of that. And so we have a lot of new companies downtown. I've heard a stat recently that at least one company per month has chosen to either start up or locate in downtown because we have this fiber and we have this kind of culture of innovation downtown. There's been a lot of jobs created and people want to be part of that innovation kind of network. There's other things that have kind of fallen into that innovation category. We've brought in bike share downtown. Recently, have you seen the MGO, which is a free service that'll take you around downtown? Pretty unique, pretty innovation solution to get people around downtown. What's really happened around this whole idea of innovation is people not only want to be downtown, but they're working together in different ways. And so a building like this is the new building on Willamette Street, which was the old antique mall, I think, kind of developed under the umbrella of innovation. They're attracting innovation companies. It's a hub for people to get together and meet together and solve problems together and take advantage of opportunities together. And this whole innovation idea, I think, is we've just scratched the surface. And so as we go forward downtown, you'll hear a lot about the whole idea of innovation and innovation districts. And so it's a platform that I think is working. And buildings like this are investing in being downtown because they want to take advantage of that innovation network. So what's next? This is even more exciting for me because there's 15 years of really, really positive things, but there's more to come. The Fishery market expansion, I think most of you probably know what's gone on, but it's 127 new apartment units downtown, 82-room hotel, new retail. Nike has announced that they're coming back to downtown. I think the first Nike store was actually downtown, so it's awesome that we have a Nike store coming back to downtown. Right across the street, Market Street Commons is 50 units of affordable housing that Homes for Good is bringing downtown. Ferry Street Manors, the Bennett family is developing a 50-unit housing project on the east side of downtown that will start construction pretty soon. We're working on a new town square, which is really exciting. It's really a reimagining of our town square, a new home for the farmers market, a home for City Hall. I think if you go back 100 years in time, that was really the kind of the path we were on for a town square, and then over time it kind of got chopped up and we built a parking garage on our town square and things like that. So this is another back to the future moment where I think we have to go back in time, learn that maybe we shouldn't have done a few of those things, and we're kind of rebuilding our town square. I think this is a really, really great opportunity for our community to finally have that real gathering place for the community where they can come to celebrate or protest or access services or see entertainment and so forth. A big part of that, and one of the signature pieces obviously, is a new home, permanent home for our farmers market, which goes back 100 years actually, and they've never really, at least in the modern era, had a great place to be. So our goal is to have create a great place for the farmers market. The riverfront redevelopment, again, picking up on the story where we purchased the AgriPac property, we kind of did the same thing with eWeb. The need for eWeb to be on the river over time just kind of eroded, and so we've purchased the property, and if you've noticed, it's become, or getting to a point where it's being prepared for development, and we're building a park, we're scraping the site, leveling the site, and doing all those things. Exciting opportunity to bring housing downtown, a hotel, potentially, affordable housing, restaurants, some retail. All of those things are planned for the riverfront. The park is actually under construction. If you haven't been by, it's pretty exciting. And then the development probably would start in the next couple of years. So this is a great opportunity for us. Again, the park is envisioned to be a world-class park. It's been designed by the community, so to speak. We've done a lot of work with the community to really try to design a world-class park. This is our gathering place on the river, and I think what's most exciting about this is we've been working on this for many, many years for downtown to finally be able to reach out and get to the river, and this is our moment, and it's really happening, so that's really cool. The steam plant is a critical part of that as well. We also own the steam plant now, the city does. We're working with developers, and I kind of see this as the place we finally get to have a beer on the river. We've been talking about that as a community for a long time, and this is one of those things where the steam plant can represent our history. It'd be a gathering place for restaurants and workers and all those kinds of things. It's a really exciting opportunity. If you go out to the site now, you can see we're starting to do some work on the site. It's really exciting. We're cutting back to riverbank so you can actually see the river, doing some riparian enhancements along the river. I think what's really cool, if you're standing on the site, you can actually be at a place where you can imagine where Fish Street is going to basically extend to the river. And looking west, you can almost see all the way to the Whitaker neighborhood from the river. Looking towards the river, you can kind of imagine coming from Fish Street, walking down Fish Street, going under the Ferry Street Viaduct, and finally getting to the river. And again, it's something that we've been working on for a long time. So that's all happening. It's very exciting. I just want to close with a couple of things. One is what I call the huge investment downtown. These are just some numbers. Numbers aren't the most important thing. I think there's so many other better things that you could kind of attach to what we've done downtown. But there's about close to $400 million in new construction downtown over the last 15 years, recognizing that most of that happened during maybe our worst recession that we'll ever experience. There's about $90 million of buildings that have been renovated, larger projects. There's about $200 million in projects that are kind of pending and out there. So, $500 million to $750 million in the last 15 years. To put that in perspective, the tax assessed value of the entire Oakway Center is about $50 million. We've invested the equivalent of about 10 Oakway Centers in our downtown over the last 15 years. It's pretty impressive. There's 4 more to come in the next few years too, as far as that $15 million. We've also brought a lot of new housing downtown, over 700 units of new housing. There's another 727 new housing units that we are potentially in the queue right now, if you consider the riverfront and the Fifth Street project and some others. I'll just leave you with this, and I said I didn't have a sales pitch, but I guess I do have a little bit of a sales pitch. I like to think of downtown as, I call it the best chance. It might not be the best chance, but it's at least one of the best chances. If you think about our goals for climate recovery and sustainability, I think downtown represents one of our best chances. If we want to protect our rivers and our ridges and get people out of their cars, downtown creates an enormous opportunity for us to do that. I just moved closer to downtown, so I don't sit on Beltline for an hour a day anymore with my car idling. I can ride my bike to work, I can get on the bus, I can walk, I have a shorter commute. That's what living closer to downtown and living downtown does for us from a sustainability standpoint. I think that's very important. If you think about neighborhood livability, we talk about that a lot these days. The more housing we bring downtown, the less pressure it is on those neighborhoods. If you think about apartments or quad units, whatever, there's a less chance or less need for those as we build up our downtown. So I actually think downtown plays an important role in protecting our livability in our neighborhoods that we all enjoy. If you think about housing affordability, big part of that equation is the supply of housing. If we can get 50 units of housing and 127 units of housing on small parcels, there's an amazing opportunity for us to address that housing affordability issue as we're really increasing the supply. And what better place to do it than downtown, where we made investment in infrastructure and all those kinds of things. If you think about economic prosperity, with the fiber network and innovation ideas, there's a tremendous opportunity to create jobs downtown and do all of those things. So I actually think downtown has this best chance kind of opportunity for our community to meet a bunch of goals that I think we've put out there. Thank you very much. I'll just finish by saying community members build great cities, community members build great downtowns. This has all been done by our community, and we couldn't have ever done it without everyone's help. We all did this together, and it's an impressive group of projects and work that we've all done together over the last 15 years. So thank you for having me here today.
Thanks, Denny. Now, City Manager John Reese will ask the first question. John has served as Eugene City Manager since April 2008. He runs the day-to-day operations of the city, reporting to the City Council. After retiring from the U.S. Army, he worked in municipal governments in Fort Collins, Colorado, Ogden, Utah, and Fresno, California. He will retire 2 weeks from today, but before he does that, he has to ask the first question.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'd just like to acknowledge Denny and your team. I think have done a wonderful job, at least in my tenure for the last 12 years. I also want to recognize Kitty Piercy's in the audience today, and she was a tremendous partner, an important part of this for the last 12 years for the development of the downtown. So Kitty, thank you very much for your wonderful work. So Denny, here's your question. How would you like for our community to see and experience downtown the day after the 2021 U.S. or the World Track and Field Championships?
That question doesn't surprise me because John has challenged us to answer that question many, many times, so I'll do my best. There's two parts of that, I think, really. One is what we do, and more importantly, I think it's how we do it. And so there was an infamous meeting that we called together right after it was announced that the World Track and Field Championships were coming to Eugene. And it was basically a whole group of division manager kind of level employees throughout the city. And we watched a brief video on the Space Needle. And if you don't know, the Space Needle was built for the World's Fair. And they wanted to build something and leave something for their community that was iconic after the World's Fairs were over. And the question that was posed to us was, what's our Space Needle going to be for 2021? And what emerged really when that group of folks started talking about it was the river. The river's our heritage. We were, downtown's disconnected from the river. Having the community be able to celebrate the river and celebrate at the river in 2021 was, I think, one of our Space Needles. The good news is we're making progress. It won't all be done in 2021, but I think people being able to gather on the river in 2021 and see the hope and everything that represents, I think will be really iconic for our community. The more important part, though, is how we work together between now and 2021 so that we have a different platform and we level up our work together after 2021. So I think about all the opportunities and all the challenges, and you could throw out housing affordability and homelessness and downtown and innovation, and all of these things together. In order for us to advance any and all of those things, we're going to have to come together and share what we all, I think, really value about Eugene and work together in a different way. 2021 kind of represents that opportunity to get to that moment, and the day after 2021, we have a different way of working together, and we can actually accomplish a whole lot more because of the momentum and the enthusiasm kind of for the event and how people see Eugene and see us, how we positively all kind of work together. So.
Thank you, Danny. Really appreciate that vision, and we look forward to working with you here at the City Club. We're going to take a small break now for you to formulate your questions, and we'll be right. Welcome back to the October 4th, 2019 program, Downtown Achievements.
Yeah, City Club member. Denny, I've seen many of the projects that you have talked about. I've lived here for 45 years. The one building that has confused me for quite a few years is the old Montgomery Ward building, owned by Lane Community College for a while, and now the city owns it. What is planning for this building?
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. I actually thought about putting it on the slide.
It probably will need some kind of subsidy like we've done before.
That is possible.
Otherwise, it won't pencil out, as you like to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. I didn't talk too much about how we do things and how we've done all this work together. There's a lot of tools that we use. There's a whole toolbox of things we use to get all this stuff done and help the community get all this stuff done. And you're right, the old LCC building downtown is one of those things going to take a little bit of love and a few tools to make that happen. We've started some discussions with Lane Community College. If you know our history, when we have a problem and we can't really see a solution, we just buy the property. And so we're in those discussions with Lane Community College. The original idea was to create some kind of innovation hub. If you think about our goals around innovation, that's hard to pull off. It's a big building, it's expensive, all those kinds of things. So we're in the process of kind of trying to pivot from that idea. I think one of the most pressing issues in our community is housing and housing affordability. So our idea with that building is to turn it into a housing project. We have some interest in maybe testing a mixed income housing project, so we could have workforce housing, market rate housing. That's something that we really haven't done very much. So I think we're on a path to potentially purchase that building and then put it out there and see if we can, again, open up our toolbox like we've done in the past and see if we can make something positive happen there, particularly around the idea of housing and housing affordability. So stay tuned. It's a good question.
My name is Todd. I'm a recent member of the City Club. Get to ask my own questions now. So, to my view, what I see downtown doesn't fully reflect my values, and I don't really know how to explain this. But I went and tried to read about the Greek concept of the polis, and the polis had at the center sacred places like temples or public, forums. This sort of thing was the heart of the downtown, and so they had a different concept of what a human being is. And the downtown doesn't reflect my values. It's too expensive. And I mean, the Oregon Country Fair is evidence that there's a huge number of people in Eugene who wouldn't build it this way. So are you satisfied with the cultural accomplishment or the human aspect of what you've built downtown? Are you happy with that, or what would be your response?
A good question. Interesting question. I've always seen downtown as a people place. I think in our history there's been moments where we've maybe focused on getting rid of people downtown, for example. My goal has always been we need to bring more people downtown, all kinds of people, a full spectrum of people downtown. That's really what the whole downtown is, a gathering place. We talk about downtown being everyone's neighborhood, for example. It's the place where the entire community should come to celebrate and to be entertained and all of those things. I think we've done a pretty good job. I mean, we've introduced affordable housing downtown. I think the whole town square concept is the idea is really to bring a diverse group of people. Thinking about the folks who come to the farmers market, for example, there's an opportunity to really enhance that and make that a showcase of our community. We already have the Saturday market downtown, obviously, and the farmers market, but have a really iconic place where more of our community get to experience downtown. When we talk about housing, for example, it's one of our interests in kind of having a mixed income housing project is to bring a more diverse group of people into our downtown. Have we gotten there yet? I don't think we're already all the way there, but we still have work to do. But I think we've done some good things.
Jerry Diethelm, City Club member for about 20 years now, and Eugene projects of all kinds for about 50 years. I wanted to add something to your Space Needle aspirations. And it just happens that one of my architecture instructors at the University of Washington was Victor Steinbach, who was one of the designers for the Space Needle. So it just shows you how long I've been involved here. But I really do like the idea that the riverfront is kind of a major aspiration, a center, something we've worked on. I was one of the consultants for a return to the river in the 90s. So there's one thing there, though, that we haven't had in Eugene for all the 50 years I've been here, and that's an art museum, a city art museum. And I don't know how many people have said to me, what are we going to do with the eWeb building? And it's right at the heart of that park development, a hotel development downtown, major public draw. I know people want to see a public building there, many people do. So I'm just saying, my question is, can we make the eWeb building into an art museum, and what are the impediments for doing such things?
Popular idea. Yeah, that idea has come up. I think there's been, our city council has expressed interest in, is there a possibility of maintaining some kind of public use for that building? It is a public building, and I think the obvious impediment is the cost. It's a large building. It's 100,000 square feet. So you think about the cost of acquiring and renovating and paying the utilities and all of those kinds of things. And for a nonprofit kind of use, I think the cost is probably the biggest impediment there. It's not for a lack of desire or that's not a good idea. It actually is a really good idea. I think the community would really have to come together and get extremely creative about how we pull it off, because it's big. It's a big building. It's expensive. If we could figure that out, I think it would be a great opportunity for the river for sure. But I think we have some work to do if we're going to get there.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Shorak-Petty, City Club member. I'm concerned about access to the new riverfront area, considering the railroad track. And have you ever, is it just one way to get there by the Fifth Street Market, or have you considered doing an underpass, such as at the Autzen Bridge, and then at the Knickerbocker Bridge there's an underpass, which seems it would bring a lot of people there. And then on another note, the town square to me looks more like a town intersection, and I'm wondering how you would handle the traffic there.
A dual question, I like it. We're really working on two access points to the river, the Fifth Street being one of them, and I think as that plan evolves, that Fifth Street connection has become a much stronger element in the current design, which I'm really excited about. The other is 8th Street, and we call that Willamette to Willamette, so think about going from Willamette Street to the Willamette River down 8th Street, and there's definitely a connection at 8th Street, and if you remember the image with the dead end to nowhere in 8th Street, our vision really is to open up that crossing at 8th, so we're working with the railroads, which is very challenging. We're working on creating a quiet zone so we can put a safe crossing, new equipment at those crossings, making that whole 8th Street more pedestrian friendly. We're talking about possibility of two-waying 8th Street so there's a better connection to the river. So the idea really is 8th and 5th kind of loop through the site We looked at all those ideas of underpass, overpass. In order to go down, you have to start so far back to get that you end up being having to acquire property, and it gets expensive, and the railroad doesn't want you to do it. It's very expensive and very complicated options. It would make it easier, just from a pedestrian experience, but I think what you'll see is people will be able to get to the river, and it'll be inviting, and people will want to be there. And the railroad is a barrier, though. I think that is one of the challenging parts of that project for sure. The second was the town square. Trying to remember the question now, but it looks like an intersection. One way to do that is to make it clear that you're arriving at a special place. So some of the concept designs talks about bringing the street up to grade and more trees, more landscaping, so that when you get there, it doesn't feel like an intersection, it feels like a place. And so you slow down, there's opportunities for you to slow down and kind of look around and see those same things. Again, back to one of my earlier images, part of the problem we have downtown with our one-way streets is they're designed for people to get through downtown. If you think about Broadway, it was designed in the opposite manner. We wanted people to slow down, look around, enjoy there, park. It's a place you want to be. So we're trying to think about how to make the town square a place you want to be, so when you get there, you know you've arrived somewhere special, so it doesn't feel like an intersection. So thank you for the question. That's good.
Ruth Miller, I've been a member of the City Club since the beginning, and I've lived through a lot of this earlier history, plus watching this, and I want to say it's very impressive, but my question is, what are you doing about getting information out to across the river for people who want to come down, might like to come down, or who's saying, I never go downtown? And it seems like this kind of a presentation would maybe help do something like that, because it seems like it's more for young people, and maybe that's the way it is. But I'm just saying some way to get people to enjoy downtown and how you publicize it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We have our communications person over here. Too bad she can't answer it. No, I think it's a goal of ours. I think we absolutely need people to come downtown in order for it to be successful. So, I assume you mean north of the river, North Eugene. I think there's, I think marketing is, but I really think it sells itself. I always think about going to Autzen Stadium, and you have to make sure you have good product on the field and parking, pay attention to parking and security and safety and behavior and all of those things. We need to spend more time managing downtown so that it feels inviting and safe, and there's good entertainment value, and there's reasons to be there. And if we can nail all of those things, I think more people will come, and in a sense it'll sell itself. I think you could put all the advertisement out in the world, but unless you have a really good product to offer, I think we're getting there. There's a lot of new retail, there's a lot of activity, a lot of housing, a lot of people. We still have work to do, so I think we'll get there eventually. And my hope is that it sells itself, that we don't have to pretend. It really actually sells itself.
Greetings. My name is Mariah Learn, and I'm always thinking about how to make our city more inclusive of marginalized communities. And several years ago, I testified in front of City Council about the possibility of the old LCC downtown building being transformed into a day center for our homeless population, a place where they could shower, get resources, nap, have storage for their area. They would be close to the bus line, the library, coffee. It's a hub, and they have the same needs as we all do, the same needs and wants as we all do, and I wonder if you've ever given any thought to that. Thank you.
That idea has come up. I'll just answer it like this. We are working on day center ideas. We could talk about whether this is the right building or another building. We're working closely with our county partners. We have what was called the TAC report, and we're now implementing that work. implementing that, a lot of that work, and it's really about shelter, it's about social services and all of those things that really as a community we need to really come together. And so we are working on a day shelter idea. Whether this is the right place or not, we can talk about, but it is something we're working on.
Nancy Afterose, City Club member. And I can remember coming to Eugene with my parents, my mother and uncle and so forth, grew up here. And I was a little kid. And downtown was a real downtown. It was fun to go to. It was a lot bigger than where I grew up in Walla Walla, although I was born in Oregon, in Lakeview. I would like to see Valley River torn down. And I am not joking. It never should have been built. It should have been turned into a gorgeous park along a gorgeous river. And I think we could get rid of a lot of the parking spaces out there and make that into a park to begin with. And what would you think of that?
I'll call for a vote. Anybody? That's been recognized many, many times. I think it's one of those things, it's a back to the future thing, I guess I'll say, is you have to look at some of those things and just say, was that the right thing to do at the time? And hopefully we've learned a little bit from that, and we don't make those same decisions in the future. So I think that's part of my message today, is I think there's opportunities for us to look back in time. Valley River might be a really good example, and learn, is that the right approach for our community? Or is there another approach that might be better? And so I don't think we're going to demolish Valley River Center anytime soon, but who knows?
Mary Layton, City Club member. So I'm a great fan of having a high school downtown, and I wonder if there was ever any conversation, or could be conversation, about moving Echo out of the parents' bedroom, as it were, down on the 200 Monroe Street, and back into downtown, where there is a community of people who include lively thinkers and concerned human beings and security people, all of whom were wonderfully helpful when I had a school downtown.
It has been talked about. It really has. I think you've highlighted the importance of it. I think having kids, especially high school kids, be able to interact within that innovation district where they can express their creativity, they can see mentors out in the community that are designing video games and doing all this cool stuff, would be highly, highly valuable. And I think that's the kind of thing that was starting to happen when Mary School's downtown. So if there was a way we could do that, I think we'd be supportive of it. We need to help our kids, and we need to get them in a place. And downtown actually has an interesting opportunity for kids that maybe aren't on the normal trajectory of education, that can use those creative energy to do stuff like gaming and all this other cool stuff that happens downtown. So I think it would be awesome.
Ruth Demler, it hasn't been mentioned about the City Hall. Are we ever going to have a City Hall? Or do we still have 10 City Halls at the moment?
The City Hall is actually a major part of the town square, and I think we have a really good opportunity to bring that forward because of the way it's being envisioned now. And that we've talked about City Hall for a while, and we've gone through different variations. Sometimes my experience is you finally stumble on the right thing. If you think about where LCC sits right now, that was going to be the library, then it was going to be a housing project, then it was going to be ORI, and then finally we stumbled on the right thing and it worked. And so I actually think there's a really strong potential that we've actually stumbled on the right thing for City Hall. I feel like it's in the right place at the right moment. Designing it with a farmer's market and a town square is the right approach. And so I have more hope today than I have in the past about a City Hall. So stay tuned.